We bring in the senior NFL reporter for the Monday Morning Quarterback, Albert Breer, back on the program. I guess it turns out that Sean McDermott was coaching for his job.
Yeah, how's your Monday morning going?
Still employed.
I would say I'm surprised, but I think there were, and I think he was surprised, but there were some tea leaves. I think Josh Allen's emotional press conference. I think McDermott, you could kind of see, with the criticism of the officials, the first time and then coming back the second time, I think you could kind of feel that there was heat on everybody there, and that the window to win a championship, like the owners were feeling that and feeling the pressure of being within that. And, I think a couple months ago, I used the Tony Dungy comparison with you, Dan, and I think it's an apt one. That's the way I see this is, Sean McDermott did a ton of good in Buffalo. They hadn't been to the playoffs in 18 years. He was there for 9. They make it in 8 of those 9 years, 7 in a row, 5 AFC East titles, 2 AFC championship games, a franchise quarterback. Like all these things were unimaginable for the Bills when he got there. But, the same way it was with Tony Dungy when he rebuilt the Bucs, the owners down there felt this shrinking window with that team they had with, Derek Brooks and Warren Sapp and John Lynch and Rondé Barber. And I think sort of the same thing with the quarterback in Buffalo. There's a feeling like we're not going to get a million shots at this, so we need to strike while the iron's hot.
So what's Buffalo do?
Yeah, it's a great question. This is, I think, a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for a coach, don't you?
Yeah. But Baltimore is as well.
Right. I just look at like this with Josh Allen and the chance to do this and compete for a championship. Like, if this job were to come open again in 3 or 4 years with the amount of damage he's taken, like we don't know that it's going to be the same Josh Allen, So if I'm the Bills, I'm taking full advantage of that. And that means you're going to interview all the usual suspects, the names that we've heard, over the course of the last couple of weeks. And there's some really good candidates out there, some of them on the defensive side of the ball, which, maybe the Bills shy away from that now because they just did spend 9 years going down that path with McDermott. But why not take big swings if you're Buffalo? Why not just see?
Well, who's the big swing?
I mean, we'll call the Rams, and I'm not saying those guys would be available, but, when you have that quarterback and you're in this situation and you might be able to entice them just to see how their situation is, why wouldn't you do it? I mean, that's the way I look at it, right? Like, it's like if I'm Buffalo, I'm looking at this and I'm saying, like, we are in a once in a lifetime window. This is a really hard place to be. We got a quarterback who carried an incredibly heavy load this year, and we want to take some of that off of him. And we can offer somebody the chance to do that and compete for championships right away with a roster that's still pretty good and has a lot of young pieces on it. I think you have to take advantage of that opportunity. And what that opportunity looks like, it's going to be in the eye of the beholder. But I mean, the one thing I can't shake is like Josh Allen turning 30 this offseason. There's the chance for someone to get in there and compete for championships right away and change the narrative on Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills. And if you're going to make this bold a move to get rid of a coach that accomplished that much over 9 years, I think your hire has to be bold as well.
Okay, but why wouldn't we say the same thing about Baltimore? They've got the 2-time MVP in Lamar Jackson.
I'd agree. It's fair. It's a fair thing to say. I just think if you look at Baltimore's success, it goes past Lamar, right? And they've always been so stable and able to build for so long. And they've got Eric DaCosta, who was groomed by Ozzie Newsome for the job. And this has been who the Ravens are for 25 years. And they found John Harbaugh, like kind of going an unconventional route. And so I think it's a little different. There's just some nuance there where, like, I think with Baltimore, as good as Lamar is, and I think Lamar's great, you know what I think of Lamar, I think it's just a little bit of a different spot than Buffalo, where you look at it and it's just so much has been built around that one player. You know what I mean? Where, man, if we've invested this much to getting it right with the quarterback, we need to get the coach right.
Yeah, I think Baltimore's a better job.
I think
I
it's probably fair too because of the stability of the franchise and everything
I
else.
think they're a better team. Buffalo I didn't think was a great team.
Are you worried about Lamar's injuries?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and that's the thing is like that's the thing you have to sort of assess, you know?
But would you hire Mike McDaniel in Buffalo?
I'd think about it.
Would you hire Brian Daboll?
I'd think about it. And the reason why I look at like so many things, and Dayball's got the built-in relationship with Josh, so that's a factor, of course. Dayball's also from Western New York. He understands the market. Like I think he'd be good in that job. Um, Watching the Bills this year, everything looks like harder than it should be. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Did you get that sense too watching them? So they got to do something at receiver. I think they got to do something to give Josh. I can still remember this, and like with Ben Roethlisberger, right? So Todd Haley came in, and this was when Arians left for the Colts in 12, and so Todd Haley came in, and that was after 8 years of Ben Roethlisberger, right, and two Super Bowl wins, and he looked at Ben and said he's not going to last if he keeps playing this way. And so, they had kind of assembled this young group of receivers with Antonio Brown and Mike Wallace and Emmanuel Sanders. And, Todd Haley kind of taken the tack. We got to make things easier on this guy. And we gotta create more layups on him for him. And we got to kind of transform who he is as a quarterback. And I think that's going to be part of the job for the next coach is like, how do we create like a second phase of Josh Allen's career where he doesn't have like in the playoffs three different injuries on the injury report at the end of a playoff week, right? How do we do that? And I remember having a lot of conversations with Todd Haley about that, back then. That was 14 years ago now. But I think some of the same principles apply where, you want to try to create a situation for your quarterback where you're making things easier on him. It doesn't look quite as hard anymore. And, you're almost generating a second phase of his career.
Talking to Albert Breer, the Monday Morning Quarterback Senior NFL reporter. Are we close to any of these vacancies being filled?
Yeah, I think Miami could be soon. I think Tennessee could be soon. Miami's got a couple of guys in this morning. Jeff Hafley's going to be in this afternoon. He worked with their new general manager, John Eric Sullivan, in Green Bay. He's been sort of the leader in the clubhouse for a few days now. Hafley's also got the opportunity to go to Tennessee. And I think whether or not he takes that trip, you're going to hear about that later today, and I just think, like it may come down to Hafley saying, I really want to take a look at the Tennessee job, which one's better, or I'm going to take the bird in the hand with a general manager that I know in John Eric Sullivan. Tennessee's accelerating their process as well. They were supposed to have Robert Saleh, the 49ers defensive coordinator, for a Zoom yesterday. They rescheduled that as an in-person interview today. They're very interested in Saleh. They've got Nagy back in for a second interview. Again, Hafley's supposed to come in tomorrow. And those are the three known finalists at this point. And, I think they like Hafley quite a bit. They like Saleh. They've got the relationship with Nagy, Mike Borgonzi does from Kansas City. And what they're looking for in a coach is presence. I think part of that is kind of maybe trying to reestablish what Mike Vrabel had there over the years. And then Cleveland has Jim Schwartz in for a second interview today. Nathan Schilhaas, the Rams pass game coordinator, and Mike McDaniel are both in the mix there as well. So you have some teams that are sort of coming down the stretch now, and it'll be interesting to see, like, as some of these names, like that people are less familiar with, like a Hafley, like maybe a Jesse Minter, as these guys start to get second interviews with multiple teams. I think that's gonna create a situation where some of the dominoes are going to start falling.
What about CJ Stroud's future?
Uncertain. They have big decisions to make this offseason. He's eligible for a new contract for the first time. He has a fifth-year option. They got to make a decision on that. And, I haven't looked up the number, but I think it's over $30 million that would lock them in for 2027. So, those are two big decisions that need to be made this offseason. And they went 3-0 with Davis Mills in there, So I think having 7 turnovers in two playoff games and being in the window that they're in. I just talked about windows with Buffalo. Being in the window that they're in with this just ridiculous defense that played really well for the most part, eventually cracked, but played really well for the most part in New England and obviously dominated in Pittsburgh. There's some big decision making that has to happen there. So I think his future is a little uncertain. I wouldn't be surprised if teams make calls just to see if he's available. But there are definitely some moving parts there, and we'll see what happens. Again, I don't know that they've had the chance to sit down and fully assess everything, and they probably won't until they review the entirety of the season.
Tell my audience everything they need to know about Jarrett Stidham.
He's an interesting name. So he was at the coming out of high school, was one of the top players in the country. Went to Baylor to play for Art Briles and got caught up in all of that. And not that he was involved, but obviously, he was one of the players that kind of became collateral damage in that whole thing. And so he winds up transferring to Auburn, played in an offense that maybe wasn't all that suited to his skill set. And when he was coming out, a lot of people looked at him and said, this guy still has all the traits that you would want in a blue chip recruit, right? And so gets drafted by the Patriots. He may have started in 2020 in New England if it weren't for COVID wiping out the entire offseason program. Obviously, the shorter offseason, the Patriots wanted somebody more experienced, so they brought in Cam Newton that year. And then Josh McDaniels, who had Stidham in New England, goes to Vegas, and they were together for 3 years in New England, and trades for him, right? And so he trades for him as to be Derek Carr's backup in 22, and then tries to bring him back to compete with Jimmy Garoppolo for the job in 23. But Sean Payton outbids him as and Sean Payton brings him in as Russell Wilson insurance. Payton did a 2-year deal with him. Then he does another 2-year deal with him. So clearly there's something there. I know Sean really liked, Stidham's ability to handle a very complex offense, because he'd played for Josh McDaniels. And they have a ton of confidence that he's going to be okay. Played really well in the preseason. I think the question is going to be here, Dan, is Nix was good, not great for 3.5 quarters of a lot of games. And then just made huge throw after huge throw after huge throw in big spots. Is why he has so many fourth quarter comebacks this year, including the one against Buffalo on Saturday. Can Stidham make those plays at the end of the game? If they can get New England into the fourth quarter and they're at home, can Stidham make the sorts of throws that Nix was making it towards the end of games? I think that's going to be the biggest question.
What's the going rate for head coaches now? As far as, because LaFleur is up to whatever, maybe $14, $15 million. Is that, or is it?
Yeah, I would say maybe even more than that. I don't have the number.
Wow.
But I can give you this, Liam Cohen got $12 million a year as a first-time head coach last year in Jacksonville. Ben Johnson got $13 million a year last year as a first-time head coach in Chicago. And I believe he had a bigger offer than that, right? And that was part of where some of the questions were with LaFleur and Green Bay. It was never, do we want to bring him back? They always wanted to bring him back. The question was whether or not they'd be able to work out a new contract, and whether if things went sideways in the negotiation, would some other team come in and offer something enticing? There were a lot of moving parts there. Obviously, they wind up getting it done. But look, here's the thing. You have second receivers, right? Second pass rushers getting $20 million a year. So for an established head coach, it makes sense. They're worth at least that much, So I think there were some owners, I would say, suppressing. I don't want to use a C word, but suppressing maybe salaries a little bit for a while there. But it certainly looks like the dam's broke. And one thing that contributed to was all the TV money that's out there. I know it was a factor in Sean McVay's negotiation with the Rams, what he was getting offered to go into network television. And, so certainly I think there's been a little bit of a correction, and those numbers are way higher than they used to be.
How did the refs do this weekend?
Am I going to get fined? And look, like I just think like public trust is at an all-time low, and I, I, I agree with Sean McDermott. There needs to be more clarity. And it can't be. I mean, and I just think watching the games and
But how do you get clarity though, Albert?
Well, I mean, here's the thing. So during the season, during the season, I'm trying to watch everything. So really, I don't get to watch like the drill down on the commentary or even the pace of some of the games as much because I'm trying to watch everything, right? And see the primetime games, of course. But during the playoffs, one thing that stuck out to me is like, it's just, sometimes you get this long drawn out explanation. Sometimes it's like, what the hell just happened? In this case, Sean McDermott is trying to slow it down so the head official can get a look at the Cooks play with McMillan there, with Jaquan McMillan there. I think that's a fair ask to have the head referee go over under the hood and take a real look at it. Who is making that ruling? Who is in the referee's ear? Like, there's just not a lot of clarity with it. And if there's not a lot of clarity, then there's going to be a lot of questions. And in an era when the NFL and its teams are taking money hand over fist from all the gambling companies, I think having some clarity on the way these things are being officiated and the way certain plays are being adjudicated is paramount. And so I've said this for a long time. Like, I just think it's gotten so tangled up. They've done a bad job incorporating the technology because they just keep kind of, all right, here are more points of emphasis. Here's more technology, and it's more. They've made it so much harder on the on-field officials, and then they don't know how to communicate it to the public. I really think that they need to go in this offseason and tear the thing down to the studs and take all the technology available, take the crews they have available, maybe add sky judges to each crew, and rebuild it all together. Because I just think what's happening right now flat out isn't working. In the eyes of the public, and the public trust is such an important thing for a professional sport.
Fritzy, is the commissioner on the phone to find Albert Breer?
Yeah, we got him.
Okay. All right, Commissioner. Albert, I know you're busy. Thank you for your time as always.
All right. Thanks, Dan.
That's Albert Breer, the Monday Morning Quarterback senior NFL reporter.